Hey everybody, this is Frank. First of all, I just wanted to thank the 3 subscribers that I have on my channel so far. It hasn't even been running up for a month, so I know there's not much content on there, and we're going to work on putting some more diverse content on there outside of stitching, obviously. But that's what I've been doing because the weather's been cold and the water's been clear so far up to this date. So like I said, thanks for the subscribers. I lost a subscriber somewhere, so maybe I can pick one up somewhere else. So today we're going to focus on something that I think is really important, almost one of the fundamentals of catching more big bass, and that is small hooks for big bass. So something like this is a number 2 Yamamoto split shot drop shot. I don't drop shot, I do split shot, and that's what the stitching is. But I've been using these for probably about 10 years now for wacky worm fishing with your smaller, thinner body types of worms like this. And that's a Yamamoto 6-inch worm, cinnamon with black flake, just a worm they call it. And the reason why I'm showcasing Yamamoto's today is, I mean, our conditions in northern Indiana are still really cold, and I tend to use Yamamoto's because they're heavy and they're dense. I tend to use them this time of year for a lot of reasons. A lot of fish aren't active, they're a little deeper. When fish aren't active, they're deeper, obviously, and the Yamamoto's, as most of everyone knows, if you don't know, they're going to stay down long, and they bump against the structure pretty good. They do really well on fish that are more structure orientated, but the lighter ones work well on fish that are weed or edge orientated. So like I said, if this was the bottom, they do a good job of hugging that bottom, staying in the strike zone for those inactive bass. I also tend to use them more in midsummer or if I'm fishing a deeper lake. So that's why I'm showcasing Yamamoto at this particular time. I don't fish Yamamoto's all year. So just to recap that real quick, that is the number 2, and a lot of people are going to think that that is just ultimately too small to rig for bass. Bass have a big mouth. They need a big hook. And obviously you can see when you rig this bad boy up, like so. I don't use anything else like this. I mean, yeah, they're Yamamoto's, they tear. That's the nature of the beast. But something like this is going to be plenty big. These hooks stay sharp. I think that the Yamagatsus for the money are very good. They're a very good investment. You can really, if you don't have a lot of them, you can really get your use out of them. They don't dull, they don't bend, but they will chip if you use them a lot around cover. So something like that with that number 2 is going to be more than sufficient. You do not need a bigger hook for something like that. A 6-inch worm, like a trick style worm, traditional earthworm, nightcrawler style bait, you got it. 6 inches to 4 inches, any other, or maybe like a finesse bait, like a smaller fluke, smaller shad shaped worm. Okay. Now for your 4 or 5 inch, this is a 5-inch Yamamoto Senko. I go with 1/0, again, split shot, drop shot, same kind of hook, same time frame I've been using them, 10 years. What's the reasoning for it? Well, as you can see with this one, how I talk about them getting chipped, and you can definitely tell I catch a lot of bass on these. I don't know if that camera can really pick that up, but this one was used probably when I was low on hooks, and they really catch a lot of bass when you just rig them like this. And I just prefer this clean, easy rigging because you can, if you're not using Yamamoto's, if you're using some other brand, this is the easiest rig to experiment with. I mean, that's probably one of the most undervalued aspects of wacky worming, is that it's so easy to experiment with these, and you can experiment with them anywhere, and they're easy to rig, obviously, as I mentioned. But something like that, again, that's more than enough gap right there, just like that. That's more for any bass than you're ever going to catch. Now again, there's a big difference in grades of hooks. I think I should mention that. But first I'll say something like this, Yamamoto, like a 3/0. If you were wacky worming it, you'd be doing a 2/0. So if you're using if you prefer that Texas rig, this is your formula for rigging them. If you've got a 5-inch bait, you divide by 2 and subtract by 1. And in a lot of the older books and publications, they would tell you to use the bigger hook to get that big bass, and you don't need that. Or there's a big difference in grades of hooks now that I'm mentioning Yamamoto in particular. In my opinion, Eagle Claws have kind of gone down a little bit in quality compared to what they were in terms of holding sharpness. And Mustad too, kind of, probably to keep their price points where they're at. So I recommend Yamamoto, but if you like an Eagle Claw hook and you get them, you can buy that 100 pack that you think is going to be about the size of this, and you can sharpen them. If that's what you like, you can do that. I mean, there are no hard and fast rules for this rigging like all bass fishing, but this is just really what I prefer to use. So the smaller hook, it really makes a big difference. They tend to inhale it deeper. They tend to inhale this pretty deep, much more deeper than this type of style. This style, there's a lot of, so your advantages to using that style hook are fish is going to really commit to it. They're really going to suck it down. That's a big plus. And it doesn't take as much force to get them to suck it. So again, kind of like when that Hibdon article, the Hibdon clip where I was talking about working with nature, it's more natural to the bass, so they tend to inhale it deeper. You don't have to have that hair trigger split-second timing. I know when a lot of people start rigging plastics, their nerves are, your nerves, I mean, when I first started doing it, after I could actually see the line when I would close my eyes to go to bed at night, I was doing so much wacky worming, experimenting with so many styles, and your nerves just get jarred after a while of fishing that way. And when you do this, you can be rest assured that you need good timing, but they're going to commit to it pretty good. I think that's the big thing. People think that they're not going to commit to it and they're not going to hold on. I know a lot of really good bass fishermen who prefer the Texas rig. To me, that also this dual vibration, and that dates back all the way to the writings of Doug Hannon. He swore that this dual type of action was really the cincher, and that if they wouldn't take it through a straight Texas rig, that this dual vibration pattern was going to draw more strikes. So the disadvantage to this, you've got to get a really good hook set. You've got to have a good stiff rod with a good fast tip to work the bait. Smaller hook, you don't need that much of a higher dollar rod. It seems like with something like this, if you get a lower dollar rod and you got some parabola in it, you can lose fish if you don't have that really good reaction time. It also takes a lot more force to get this in the bass's mouth. So I know that a lot of people think you're using that big hook, you got to pull them out of the cover and so forth. If you're doing that style fishing with bait casting and you're catching bass on Texas rigs like that, that's great. But it seems like the trend in the Midwest, talking to people at work, the Bass Myths article I had published for Midwest Outdoors, a lot of people are going with copolymer lines, fluorocarbon coated, one or the other, or the both, and they're getting more interested in this finesse style rigging, probably because it's showcased a lot, like on Fisherman or Midwest Outdoors and things like that. People are wanting to catch those more pressure types of fish. So, in order to recap your rationale for small hooks, there's a lot of pluses and there's really no minuses. I mean, to me, another one of my favorites to do with this is I like to cast this onto the shoreline. So this was your shoreline here and this was the water. You can actually just pop it right down there and begin working your bait. Cast over the target, again onto the shoreline, and work it down. Or if you've got some pads, you can cast it on the pads and drop it right down and really get an edge fish right there. So it adds that extra level of versatility. I know I was a little surprised when I would see people recommend hooks like this. I mean, the standard wacky is a wider gap, but this is a little modification that I think, I've talked to so many people that have said that they really like it a lot better, and especially not getting hung up as much. There's another weedless worm called a skin hook technique that I'm going to be working on. That's probably it's kind of a cross between this and this type of size and rigging, and I think that's going to be pretty much my go-to. But this is what I've been using. You do get some snags with this being open, obviously. but I don't think a weed guard, a big clunky weed guard, really makes it that much more weedless.